DC has had two animated cinematic universes that had their own art styles, voice actors, and overall direction. This was obviously as a result of DC seeing what Marvel was doing with the MCU, so they decided to test it out on their animated movies, and let's say one kind of worked for the most part, and the other had a rather lukewarm, or dare I say even bad reception. The DCAMU, or the DC Animated Movie Universe, started with Flashpoint Paradox and ended with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. 7 years, 15 movies, and an actual ending, unlike the DCEU, which couldn't even manage to get a proper conclusion. Then you've got the Tomorrowverse, which started right after Dark Apocalypse War in 2020 with Superman Man of Tomorrow, and finished up with the Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy. So in this video, I'll explain why the DCMU worked and why the Tomorrowverse failed. And what I mean by it worked isn't that it was some big financial success or even a critical success, but that more people resonated with it and go back to it and appreciate it. And that's just the most successful DC has ever been at a shared cinematic universe. The first and arguably the most important thing is the art style. I'll start with the art style of the DCAMU. I would it like this: a good art style but inconsistent and sometimes static animation. It had a kind of Western anime-like kind of art style, and it was also trying to look more realistic with the detail and the proportions, well, except for Flashpoint. I don't know why everyone in that movie looks like their food got stuck at their chests and never made it to their stomachs. Most people would say it looks similar to the art style of Young Justice, and I agree. It's entirely possible to mistake one for the other, as even character designs are similar. But the animation of Young Justice is much more dynamic and fluid and better overall, which is funny considering that movies are supposed to be better quality than shows. But either way, it's a pretty solid and epic looking animation style that looks like it was ripped straight out of a comic book. And even if you didn't like it, it just made the universe pop more and look a bit more serious. Like, this is the best looking Darkseid ever, and it shouldn't even be a hot take. Then came the Tomorrowverse, and the art style was its biggest shot in the foot, because a mid or okay movie can be watchable with a good art style, but a mid or okay movie with a bad art style is going to be way more boring and less enjoyable. And that's the case with the art style of the Tomorrowverse. It had super thick outlines which looked ugly at times, with really basic character and costume designs. I guess they were trying to be safe with the character designs, but it just came out as bland. And I mentioned the DCEMU Darkseid, but just compare him to the Tomorrowverse manga. Horrible. And this is supposed to be the comic. And the funny thing is, it's not terrible on its own. In fact, Man of Tomorrow looks decent alone. But for an entire cinematic universe, it got boring fast. And this is one of those cases where taking a risk doesn't pay off, because yeah, it's stylistic, but it doesn't work for everybody. And there's also how static it is. Like, trust me, the DCMU was static at times. Even Invincible can be static at times. But the Tomorrowverse took it personally. No dynamism, no fluidity, just PNG drive. And so it ended up looking low budget and just an overall downgrade from the DCAMU. The next reason is world building. While the DCAMU was also short-lived, it passed the major test. It felt connected. There was actual world building. You had plot threads, characters going across movies, references, and by the time we got to Apocalypse War, it all came together in this giant, messy, but enjoyable ending. Damian Wayne starts as a killer in Son of a Batman, and he never kills again after that. And him sacrificing himself for his father is just more satisfying since you actually know this kid, regardless of if you like him or not. Darkseid gets introduced as the big bad from the very first movie and in the Superman movies, establishing the Parademons and Doomsday. So when you hear Paradooms, it makes sense. The Teen Titans get 2 movies, the Suicide Squad gets a movie, and there's a tie-in to Flashpoint Paradox, which is really cool and plays into the interconnectivity. John Constantine gets a movie. My point is, every important person or group in the final movie got an introduction at some point, so they didn't just assume we already knew all the characters, so any casual fan would find it easy to understand. Plus, there's a pretty consistent tone, except for Dark Apocalypse War, where they amped it up to the max. Then the world building of the Tomorrowverse, which is non-existent and confusing at the same time. Like, Man of Tomorrow starts decently, but the world feels a bit enclosed. The events of the Justice Society don't matter, except for that one scene with Dr. Fate, which is also confusing. Long Halloween looks like it was set too much in the past, while Man of Tomorrow looks like it was set too much in the future. Both of them are present day, by the way. And also, there's a noticeable tonal difference between the Batman movies compared to the rest of the movies, as well as the difference in overall quality. Green Lantern Beware My Power skipped to after the formation of the Justice League, which is like, what's the point of creating a connected universe if we're not gonna grow with these characters? Plus, the events here don't matter in the final movies, and Hawkgirl and Vixen are in the movie but are not romantically involved with John. But you skip to Crisis on Infinite Earths and you see John and Shira together. It makes you feel like you've skipped a few movies. Legion of Superheroes is unimportant. Warworld is also unimportant except for the end, and that's it. That's all the world building. Next point isn't really a big deal, but it was for me, and that's the fights. Now look, this is animation. It's supposed to make the impossible possible, and literally the only good fight in the entire universe was Superman versus Lobo, where it looked like the animation was actually good for a while. And then we go back to this, and you don't know how it felt to watch a Justice League movie where the action is essentially this. And that's a big part of what made it boring to me. Meanwhile, the DCAMU. Now, the DCAMU was a bit of spectacle over substance, but that didn't really work against it. Like, this scene was so hype, and so were a lot of the fights. Doomsday versus Superman, Talon versus Batman and Damian, the entirety of Hell to Pay. Like, even if some of these movies were pretty average, at no point was I bored. And this is why anime and even Invincible are beating out DC animation. Like, anime movies like Demon Slayer Infinity Castle are easily cinema worthy, even if it's just for spectacle. But as a fan of DC animation, I personally wouldn't pay to see any of the Tomorrowverse movies except for the Batman ones. And like, I see more channels making recaps of the DCMU fights, but trust me, you're not seeing that for the Tomorrowverse. Now, if I were to rate all the DCMU movies and get a percentage, it will get a 7.5. But as a connected universe, it's easily an 8. Meanwhile, the Tomorrowverse movies would get a 6.5 in total. But as a connected universe, it would be a 5. Like I said, some of these movies could have worked as standalones, like Green Lantern Beware My Power, Justice Society, and definitely The Long Halloween 1 and 2. Like, I don't even know what that movie was doing in that universe. So yeah, when you compare the two, it's not even close. The DCMU is easily DC's most successful attempt at a cinematic movie universe, not just animated, but in general. It slams the Snyderverse. So anyway, subscribe. Like, actually do it if you want to see more videos like this, and tell me your thoughts in the comments. Like, the DC animation space feels like a secret club. Ask my friend if he watches anime, he says yeah. I ask him if he's seen Invincible, he says yeah. But I ask him if he's seen Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3, and so yeah, I would actually like to know what you guys think. Please comment, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.